Here Come the Details, a screen show with Josh FADEM. A few months ago, the band Wilco played in Tulsa at King's Ballroom. Musician, photographer, and Wilco band member Pat Sansone randomly struck up a conversation with Josh and friends at the local coffee shop, which resulted in today's discussion. We found Pat Sansone's music, demeanor, photography, thoughts on the creative process, curiosity, and his voice transfixing, and we think you will too, as this is our most hypnotic and relaxing episode yet. Watch it on a massive screen or while meditating. Enjoy.
My phrase for it has become to get into a heightened state of noticing.
Do you think of yourself as a curious person?
My phrase for it has become to get into a heightened state of noticing.
Do you think of yourself as a curious person?
I do, yeah. I do, definitely. Yeah, it's been a part of my construction, I think, since I was very, very small. And grew up in a small town
Called
Meridian, Mississippi. And yeah, I mean, I think probably a lot of my curiosity, if it didn't just come directly from the experience of growing up in a small town, was certainly amplified by it.
Yeah. By
just the need to think about things outside of the city limits from where I grew up, and just being, I was just hungry for information about stuff happening other places. But I mean, I have to imagine there's parallels between being from some towns in Oklahoma and being from some small towns in Mississippi, that if you encounter them out in the wild, sort of out of context, that's pretty exciting, and there's things to talk about.
So do you find it's just natural thing, curiosity, or are you you have to actively be curious?
For me personally?
Yeah, do you think about curiosity?
Yeah, well, that's close. I just actually heard him talking about the process of processing film and talking about film photography, and I just chimed in and said, hey, I heard you talking about that. I shoot film myself.
That's right.
And then he said to me, wait, are you Pat Sansone, and you used to get your film processed at this particular film lab in Nashville that he used to work at.
Yeah.
So that was just a complete coincidence.
Is it worth plugging that, or do you want them to go out of business?
No, definitely worth plugging. Boutique Film Lab in Nashville, Tennessee.
Okay, good, because everyone's going to hear this.
So what a small, I love that. I love those moments, I
know, you're in Oklahoma here.
Yeah. So much a part of my life is traveling as a touring musician, as a rock and roller, and a lot of my photography, I think, is an expression of this kind of restlessness, a curiosity, something in me that just enjoys and feels the need to be curious, to be open, to wander. I love to just kind of wander. That's really what my approach to my photography is. I basically just grab my cameras. We'll have a day off on tour, and I'll just rent a car and get the car in the morning, and then just drive. And most of the time, I don't have a destination.
Yeah. Really?
Yeah.
Did you do that today, and you wound up in Pulpa, you said?
Exactly. Well, I went there kind of more specifically because I wanted to see the town where some of Rumblefish was filmed.
Oh, cool.
And I just had a feeling that a town that size near here would probably have the kinds of things that I like to take.
Did you look up Rumblefish locations?
I did,
yeah. So did you do some... Are you the type of person who will take the film still and match it? Did you photograph?
Well, I didn't really do that today because in downtown, how do you pronounce it? Was
Sapulpa? You got it right. Just like Sansone.
Yeah. They're like, all of downtown is it's like Christmas Village. They're like doing this big Christmas, like they're getting ready for a big Christmas thing. So a lot of the storefronts and facades were covered up with Christmas, stuff.
Yeah.
So I didn't really but I could tell that it's the kind of town that I would like to photograph in. But really, it just, even more so than just the, a lot of times it's not even the results I get from these little journeys, although if I get some great stuff, that's a bonus. But I've come to realize that a lot of it for me is just the experience of being in that headspace, of being in a place that I don't necessarily know, that I'm experiencing for the first time. So my phrase for it has become to get into a heightened state of noticing.
Yeah.
And that's like a big part of, and I kind of have started to think of my photographs as noticings, and it's really just about being in that headspace. Yeah, it's a meditative endeavor, and that often will lead me, and it's a very solitary thing.
Yeah.
But sometimes it does lead me into connections and conversations that I never would have expected.
Yeah.
Much business here? So, we do okay. I asked because I was thinking of settling down here. That's all? I have a business in New York. I was thinking of buying a little place here, maybe building. Somewhere along the beach. It's not too crowded. You can find places out here to be quiet in, all right? What are you laughing at? Nothing. Like I say, if you want to be alone, you can find it out here, that's all. Maybe that's what you need, mister. Maybe that's what you need.
You don't seem like an anxious guy. Do you think you are?
I have my moments for sure.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of what I'm talking about is something that
pulls you back in.
That pulls me back in.
Yeah.
And there's obviously a reason that I feel the need to do this, because it is kind of a, maybe not, if not an addiction, it's definitely a compulsion. It's like sometimes I'm just like, what am I? I'm pulling myself out of a hotel bed at 7:45 in the morning when I could just be like sleeping.
I think
like,
it's
what
great.
What am I doing? Why am I doing this? But then I get in that mode, and obviously I need to do it for some reason.
Have you ever struck up a conversation with someone in a random town at a coffee shop, and you're like, this person?
Well,
what are you laughing at? Nothing.
Well, I will tell you one. This other than yesterday.
What in the hell did I get?
I mean,
myself
I go to get breakfast tacos, and then now I'm on a podcast.
Yeah, here we are.
But I love that.
But that's
Can I interject something? I was thinking you have such a soothing voice. You could have been a therapist, I feel like. Did you ever think about that?
Actually, that is one of the few occupations that I have imagined for myself.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was in my late teens, I was sort of. I mean, it was either going to be academia or rock and roll. Rock and roll won, but
It usually does.
But I did I did study psychology, and philosophy was kind of that's what I majored in. I just got a bachelor's in philosophy right at the time that it made me qualified to have an existential crisis at age 20, 21. So my first of a few. But yeah, but getting back to you asking about unusual, these little moments, these meetings, and kind of unusual conversations.
Have you ever gotten yourself into some sort of trouble? Sorry, what were you going to say?
Well, one of my favorite moments of the last few years was I was in Spain. We were on tour in Spain, and I just went out with my cameras and was taking photos. And then there's a great photography museum in Madrid. And during the day, I was thinking to myself, like, okay, these photographs that I'm taking today, there must have been a Spanish photographer kind of in that period that I love, like the 60s and 70s, like shooting color photography in Spain, because there's so much beautiful light and color in Spain. And why don't I know who that person is? I've definitely been like trying to learn as much as I can about color, or early color photography. But there must be a Spain person, and I made a note to myself, like, I need to really dig in and find out who that is, because I don't know who it is. And I just went and made my way to the photography museum there, just to see what was on. I didn't know what was going to be on. I just wanted to be there. And I walk in, and they're having an exhibit of this photographer named Carlos Sequeir, I think is his name, Sequeir. And it was like exactly what I was looking for. I mean, it was 1960s, 1970s, into the 80s, color Kodachrome photography of, the kinds of stuff that I like to shoot, and just, beautiful stuff. It like made me gasp. It was so gorgeous. I was like making noises in the exhibit, and I wanted to talk to somebody. I was like, I want to talk to somebody about this because I'm just so blown away. And I noticed this couple that was like walking around, and they were smartly dressed, and they were about my age, a little bit older, and they were like kind of looking like this, and pointing, and obviously having a real conversation about it, but in Spanish.
Yeah.
So anyway, at some point after making like 2 or 3 loops around the exhibit, we ended up at the same image, and it was one I kept coming back to, and I just said in English to them, I was like, I'm blown away by this exhibit, and this photograph especially is just incredible. Just to see if they, if there was a reaction, and she went, you're enjoying it. She's like, you're enjoying this exhibit? And I was like, yeah, I never even heard of him until 40 minutes ago, and now I'm just blown away. And she was like, he was my father.
Whoa.
And I was like, are you kidding me? And then we ended up talking for like about an hour about her father and this work. Yeah. And I almost didn't say anything.
Yeah.
But I just decided in that moment maybe I should just express myself. Well, that's a great way to put it. It's about just like being open. It's like about being open, like letting yourself receive, and if if you're in the right state of mind, then you can also transmit. And if you're transmitting, then maybe that's going to like land in the right way, and that just opens up a whole nother channel of energy, of conversation, of consciousness.
We don't know where we're gonna go.
Tulsa is the reason I've become buddies with the actor and photographer Jason Lee, because he was having a photography exhibit here maybe 6 years ago, and I just wandered into it and really loved the work. And I didn't even know he made photographs, but it was really, really cool work. And then ended up having a conversation with Scott, who was the curator at the Philbrook here, who had put on this exhibit, and then he connected Jason and I, and then Jason and I have become friends. So every time I come to Tulsa, there's some kind of vibrational thing that happens.
Is everybody in your band kind of have a chill energy like you, or is there somebody in the band that's like real boisterous and like real out there?
You can get in trouble for unless that's the persona, like I'm the guy in the band who's known for being boisterous and out there.
Well, I think we're all we do have similar sensibilities in a lot of ways, and we're all very curious people. We're all interested in a lot of different things, and involved in other creative pursuits, and I think that's one of the reasons that the band works. It's one of the reasons that this particular lineup of the band has been around for almost for over 20 years. Is we do kind of seem to operate on a somewhat similar frequency in that way.
The other day, I was on the freeway and I was exiting, and there was a little bit of a traffic jam, and there was a cop a few cars ahead, and they were pulled over, and then cars started going around, and then I saw the police officer had it looked like it was caught a dog. The dog was jumping around, and then as I got closer, I realized it was a pig. And that pig was it was a big pig, a big hairy pig.
Is that an Oklahoma thing?
I've never seen it before, but I wondered, how did that pig get there? I wanted to ask the cop, what's that pig? What are you doing with that pig? And the cop was just kind of standing there. I wonder if he was waiting for backup or something like that. You know what I mean?
To me, I read in David Byrne's book, How Music Works, that music is kind of made for the environment that it's played in. and just kind of seeing you guys in the Canes last night, it just feels like there couldn't have been a more ideal place for the style and like the way you guys were jamming out.
Yeah, well, it's a very comfortable place to play. There's obviously so much music history there. And to these shows that we're doing on this particular tour have we did kind of make a conscious effort to make it a little more casual, like not as much production, not as much lighting, cues, and being a little less precious with the arrangements, which has been very good for us. And I think it's been nice to do that. Sort of like has this feeling of like it's the end of the year. We've had a busy couple of years. Why don't we just put our instruments on stage, not worry about the showbiz part of it as much. Not that that's a huge part of what we do, but let's even take that even more out of the equation and just play, and maybe stretch out on some things and and I think this is a good room to do that in. It kind of has...
The whole vibe just felt amazing. And just for lack of a better way to put it, I mean, honestly, some of the songs felt like they were completely falling apart, but in the best possible way. Everyone was just...
What are you talking about?
The crowd got it. You guys knew exactly what you're doing, but it was just like, so it just felt amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of that comes too from the fact that we have played together for so long. We know each other really well musically, so it gives you the ability to kind of wander, kind of like we were talking about.
Yeah.
And we can kind of roam a little bit.
Yeah.
And you get to kind of go through material that you don't normally do. Is that kind of what I was getting from being able to do a couple of nights? And
yeah, like we just did 3 nights in Austin where we did, it's about a 30-song set, and we did 3 nights in a row with no repeats. So it was 90 songs.
So are you going to do any repeats from?
No, tonight will be all
really?
All different songs.
Even like the most well-known ones?
Yeah.
If you really wanted those ones, you blew it by not going last night.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the whole concept of this one is to do that. So it's we're taking a little wander through our catalog.
So interjection, but small shows versus big shows. Do you have a preference? Do you ever do small shows anymore?
Yeah, we played at a little. We played at a place in Chicago at the end of our touring season in 22 called Carol's Pub, which is a tiny bar in on the north side of Chicago, which was really fun. It's like maybe 100 people there or something.
And then you were rehearsing before there. Like, is that normal? Is that par for the course?
Oh, you mean before a show?
Yeah.
Yeah, we set up instruments at backstage for about and just play for about half an hour.
So you just kind of like go through it, or you just start getting warmed up?
It's just to kind of get in the headspace, just so we're not walking on stage completely. And sometimes like this, we're having to like relearn songs that we haven't played in several years. So we're just to kind of get some refreshers.
The Autumn Defense is.
It's John Stewart, the bass player from Wilco, and I. We started that band we met in New Orleans, because I used to live in New Orleans, and he's from New Orleans, in the late 90s. And we became friends, just kind of realized we were into a lot of the same music, which was, not that common in New Orleans at the time, like the stuff that we were into, like the Kinks and the Zombies and a lot of sort of 60s and 70s pop.
That people weren't into that in New Orleans in like the late.
It wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't that common. At that time. So
what were the trends then there?
Well, New Orleans is its own amazing animal. It's like it's just such its own universe.
Who were the biggest bands from New Orleans that are like rock bands? I'm just trying to think trivia-wise. Who would around that time the band on the scene then?
Oh, on the scene then. Well,
yeah, or they blew up or whatever.
Well, there was a band called Better Than Ezra that was kind of a big band in New Orleans in the 90s.
Yeah, good. This was their big hit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So anyway, so we started our project there, and then put out a couple of records, and that's how I got pulled into Wilco, was because I was part of the extended Wilco family.
Yeah.
And the lineup was changing. You know, a member had left, and they had made this record that Jeff just wanted to bring in some new players to you know, kind of cover that material. And
Yeah.
I just kind of got absorbed in. You
Yeah.
know, it wasn't an audition or anything. I was
Yeah.
just sort of already on the periphery.
Yeah. You know,
I've got a note here that my girlfriend lived in Riverside Village, Nashville, and Inglewood, Nashville.
That's where I live. Yeah.
Oh, you live there too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Those are good areas then.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So she lives there.
She did live there.
Oh,
now
okay.
she lives here in Tulsa with me.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I wonder if we.
She
were
used to go to a
neighbors.
bar called Mickey's all the time. You ever been to Mickey's?
I have been to Mickey's.
Yeah. Do you like it?
Yeah, I mean that's a good sort of, you know, late night spot.
Yeah. She described it like it was kind of rough or something.
Yeah.
Like a dive.
It's divey. Yeah.
have you been to this one place that they do karaoke and they smoke?
That's Fran's.
Fran's,
That's
yeah.
Fran's,
Is
yeah.
that a well-known? Is that a
Oh, yeah.
legendary place?
Yeah,
I've been there,
yeah.
I think, a few times.
Yeah, I mean it's just a cinder block
Yeah.
box basically when they sell, like, you know, canned beer out of a
Yeah, for like
cooler.
$2 or $1 or whatever.
Yeah.
Do a lot of people go to Fran's?
Well, the original Fran's is now closed. I haven't been to the new one, but the original Fran's, the classic Fran's, is closed a couple of years ago.
Okay, so then maybe I haven't been to that one. Maybe that's the one I went to when I used to go there
Probably,
sometimes
yeah,
when I'd visit
yeah,
Nashville.
yeah.
So they moved. So it felt like it hadn't been touched since like 1983 or something.
Yeah, I mean that place was like you were just walking into another world.
Yeah.
You know, a very its own with its own.
Your coat, if you don't like cigarette smoke, it's going to be ruined
Yeah,
for being in there
yeah,
for,
yeah.
you know. There was a girl who was a host, and everyone in Nashville seems to be able to sing really
Mm-hmm.
well, you know, and they all can sing in that style. I was there one time, I mean, it's probably 5 years ago, and I sang Bruce Springsteen's The Rising,
Wow.
You know?
Yeah, yeah.
and I remember, you know, I was singing I went through a big phase where I was like a massive karaoke person. Like in LA, there was this place called Tokyo Beat. I'd go there almost every night and sing by myself. I just became kind of like, I was like maybe not going up as much in stand-up, and I started doing karaoke a whole bunch and eating ramen, and it was just, it was not always that crowded, so you could just keep singing. Anyway, so I sought out karaoke in Nashville, and I went to Fran's, and I sang The Rising. You know, maybe it wasn't quite completely sincere, you know, because it's not, let's be honest, the Boss's best song.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when it came out, I was like 21, and I was like, this fucking song sucks. And, man, he's just making music for 40-somethings. And then when I started approaching 40, I was like, this song's pretty damn good.
I'm connecting with this.
Yeah, ooh, I get it now.
Yeah.
And I just remember singing it, and there was a cool guy with like gray hair and a jean jacket, and he looked like he was maybe 10, 15 years ago, like the coolest guy on the scene. And he was sitting there, unamused, staring, maybe a little amused.
Mm-hmm.
And while I'm singing it, he says, "Takes a special kind of asshole to sing this song." And I was like, he got it.
He got it. There was a woman that was walking down the street that I live on, and it was pretty intense. She got attacked by a pit bull. There was a pit bull that lived in the backyard of one of my neighbors. It was just really dangerous, and the pit bull jumped the fence and attacked this poor woman. And I heard her screaming, and I went over, and one of my other neighbors was able to get the pit bull off. And but I took her to the emergency room, and I'd never met her before, but we got to know each other a little bit on the drive, you know, to the emergency room. Turns out she's from Chicago, and so we talked a bunch about Chicago on the way, and I mean, this dog really bit her. It was bad.
Was she bleeding?
She was, yeah. It was intense, but she ended up being okay, you know. But so just to kind of like, you know, keep everything calm on the way to the hospital, we talked about Chicago. She talked about how she loved Illuminati's pizza, and she really missed Illuminati's pizza. And turns out when she lived in Chicago, one of the ways she made a living is she was a Tina Turner impersonator. She would do singing telegrams as Tina Turner.
Wow.
So she was like the Tina Turner queen. And she handed me her card, and it said her name, and underneath, karaoke queen of East Nashville. So as it turns out, she was the karaoke queen, would bring her own mic to Fran's. She was just like one of the, like when she showed up, it was game.
Do you ever see her
It was
around
game on.
still?
I haven't seen her for a while.
Still have her card?
Yeah, I do still have her card.
There's also the Lipstick Lounge. Do you know that one?
Yeah.
Is that still open?
This is all in my neighborhood. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I spent, I guess, a lot of time in Nashville, in short bursts. So Fran's is gone.
Well, it's now in a new location.
What
which
do
I
they
haven't
do with
been
that?
to. There are so many parts of Nashville that I don't really participate in, but my little world is based around art and music and making records. I mean, that's why I moved there, is because I wanted to be kind of around record making in a real, direct way. Early on, like moving down there, I went to the grocery store, and like I'm standing in the cereal aisle, and I run into Robin Hitchcock, and we start up a conversation, and then 3 days later I'm in the recording studio with him, singing backup on some Robin Hitchcock songs.
Yeah.
So from the cereal aisle to
to
the studio, yeah. That kind of thing is, being in Nashville, that kind of thing can happen. Because
What cereal were you getting at the time?
I think it was Puffin's. I'm pretty sure. Some nights when it's just, the things that you think you usually work just don't seem to land for whatever reason. It's not, it's tone. It's just like, what is the tone of this room? And sometimes you get surprised. You think, maybe you go to a venue or a town where, you have experience, history where it's like been a high vibe.
Yeah. Oh, we're gonna kill tonight.
Yeah, and then you get up there and it's just like, and then you have to really look around and go, okay, where, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
Why isn't this working? And it can be surprising. Well, I'm just sort of thinking about starting out as a musician or songwriter or record maker, and kind of how, there's a lot of pressure to be original, which obviously is, valuable, but to find your own voice and to be authentic to your, expression, but at the same time, sometimes that pressure to be original can sometimes, I think, be maybe distracting or be, paralyzing, because there's so much pressure to be like the first, feel like, and if you're doing something that's similar to, and I'm just kind of speaking in music or photography or art.
It's the same thing.
It's like pretty much everything I've ever done musically can be connected to something else. I mean, there's, like the Beatles are pretty much in every modern pop song. We're still all writing, and to try to pretend like it's not is not necessarily valuable. I mean, I guess when I was younger, I probably felt more pressure to try to steer away from my influences. But maybe the older I've gotten, I'm not worried about it as much. And it's like, oh, if something's Beatley or something's like this or something's like that, that's okay. I mean, it's all part of the, and I think. I'm just curious, like, that must come into the conversation with comedians too, because we're all inspired by somebody when we're younger. The thing that sparks us and makes us go, oh, I love that. I want to do that, or I want to be around that. I want to be part of that. And of course, when you're first starting, that's all you know how to do, is to you just want to copy the things that you love. You just want to find a way to do that.
Yeah.
Then there's a point where you start to become self-conscious about it, because maybe the thing that you're doing starts to get a wider audience, and then criticism comes in, and people are weighing in.
More eyes come on it.
Yeah,
and you're like, okay,
people are
well,
weighing in. It's like, and you hear a little something. Oh yeah, and then just the pressure to be like authentic and original becomes more of the conversation. And then
I wanted to ask you about your photography when you release it, and so you like.
Yeah, I made a book. My first sort of my first experience with making photographs was making Polaroid, working with a Polaroid camera.
Yeah.
Because I didn't study photography, but in the mid 2000s I happened to buy kind of on a whim this Polaroid SX70 camera from the 70s, and
You heard of that one?
it was the first Polaroid camera they call it integral Polaroid, where the photograph comes out the front, and it comes out the front of the.
That's what I think of when I think of Polaroid. Yeah.
And the SX70 was it was an expensive camera in its time in the early 70s. It had a beautiful glass lens. It was a serious camera.
Yeah.
So I happened to buy one in the mid 2000s. I had dabbled in photography here and there. Had toy cameras around, and my dad had a beautiful camera. He wasn't a artsy photographer or anything, but he had this really beautiful camera that I was always fascinated with. Anyway, kind of through being interested in some experimental filmmakers, because I got really interested.
Care to name some names of you?
Joseph Cornell, who's kind of known as really for his sort of surrealistic shadow boxes and dioramas that he made like in the 30s and 40s. He started working with Stan Brakhage and a few other of the New York school experimental filmmakers in the 60s. Who's the other cat that was kind of part of Jonas Mekas? Yeah.
And Adolphus Mekas, his brother.
Oh, I didn't know that. Also made filmmaking.
He also made experimental films. There's a feature film that Adolphus Mekas directed that's pretty weird, and it's got actors in it called Hallelujah the Hills.
Oh, cool.
And I recommend it. But yes, I don't know. Anyway, I was just curious.
Yeah.
I like the names. I'm a names guy.
I just saw an amazing exhibit in.
I don't know Cornell, but I know.
He's not really known as much for his films as his other work. But I just happened to wander into a Joseph Cornell Film Festival at Anthology Archives in New York in the early 2000s, and I was just so blown away by it. It was really just like open up the Village Voice, reading what's going on that weekend.
That's the thing. It's like if you're curious about that, you just show up to one thing. And
well, that's exactly the point. I mean, reading that little blurb in Village Voice that afternoon on the subway just made me get out at that subway stop, go to the Anthology that afternoon because I didn't have anything else to do.
Yeah.
Walked into this film festival, get introduced to Joseph Cornell, blows my mind, and then and that inspires me to pick up some cameras and start making photographs.
Wow.
So that work I kind of shot with that Polaroid camera in the mid 2000s and leading up to, and I made a book in 2010 because I exhibited 100 of those photographs at our Solid Sound Festival, our first Solid Sound Festival. So I made a book to kind of go along
Is the
with
book
that.
still available?
I just sold out of my second printing.
Wow.
But I'm working on a new book of work that I've been making in the last 5 years, kind of starting right before the pandemic. I started shooting with 35 millimeter and medium format, and then really I was kind of getting the itch to make photography again leading up to that, because I kind of walked away from it for a little while. Just not it wasn't like a big statement or anything. I just got involved in other things. But I was feeling the itch to shoot again. I picked up a couple of cameras, and then the pandemic happened. And then all of a sudden, I've got all this open-ended time and anxiety, not knowing what's coming, what in the world is going on.
Where were you based during the pandemic? Nashville?
Nashville, yeah. But my father had a stroke right at the end of 2019. So all this kind of happened all around at the same time. His situation, the pandemic, getting taken off the road, and I had these cameras kind of like sitting there that I felt like, for some reason, I felt like I needed to have these cameras. Now now I've got all this time. And I was driving between Nashville and Atlanta a lot, because that's where my family lives, to go help out with him. So I was just driving, and I found myself, I'd go over there every other weekend, and on the way home I would just take some back roads, or I would just kind of type in, give me a route that's not the interstates. And so I just find myself in little towns that I'd never been in before.
Ghost towns sometimes.
Ghost towns, and everything was empty because because it was lockdown. And this was just kind of igniting this, like what we're talking about, this curiosity of like, I'm just going to get lost. I don't have to be back. I don't have to be back in Nashville for anything specific. So I'll take 2 days to get home.
Yeah.
And find myself in these strange places. And so the photography was kind of, I'm making photographs the whole way, but really it was sort of about being in this state of mind.
Do you have an opinion on like the end product not being as important as the actual act of pursuing it, doing it, finding it? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think I completely.
Not to say this extreme, like you could ditch the photographs just to keep doing it, or something.
I'm not going to go that far. Yeah, I'm not that. Yeah, I'm not that.
You have to choose one child over the other.
I wouldn't say I'm that Buddhist about it.
Yes.
But I definitely love that concept, and I do think that is a big part of it. I mean, I like making the work. I like sharing the work. I like it when others connect to it. I like it when somebody enjoys it.
Yeah.
I like when I sell a piece. I mean, I'm not going to say that that's not important, but I spend way more time in that other space of just making and wandering and having days where I don't take, I might be out on the road all day long and I don't even take one good photograph or,
This value only at Woodcraft. This deluxe desk is a full 54 inches wide with solid oak raised panels all around. The double pedestal base features 3 drawers per side on smooth ball-bearing glides. The solid oak roll top features a unique system that locks both the top and the drawers at the same time. You'd pay $16.99 for this desk elsewhere. At Woodcraft, it's just $7.99.
Well, I've been making music for all these years, and I've never released an album just under my own name.
Yeah.
Until this past year. It's called Infinity Mirrors. And it's 6 instrumental sort of ambient pieces, like based around synthesizers, because I have some old synthesizers that I've been carrying around for years and years, and use them here and there on things. But back in 2017, I had this feeling that I just needed to get out of my comfort zone, I guess you could say, because I kind of felt like I'd gotten into a rhythm with the kinds of records I was making, the work I was doing, just kind of falling into a groove that I wanted to just break out of and do something different than what I usually do. So I decided to make some music with these synthesizers that I have. My method was I would just go down into my basement studio in one evening with nothing at all planned, and just kind of look around the room and choose 4 instruments, and make a piece in that evening with those 4 things. Whatever happened in that evening with those 4 things, that was the piece, period. Yeah. And it wouldn't go back the next day and rearrange or change. It was a way for me to be in the moment, do something, because usually with a lot of the work that I do in the studio, I'm very much the detail guy, and I can get very granular, and I love that. I love the puzzle of songwriting and the puzzle of record making and mixing. But this was more about just like letting something happen, And it was really just a personal exercise. Didn't have any intention to release it or make a about it or anything. And so I did these four pieces and sort of put it on the shelf and didn't think about it for a while. But then during the pandemic, during one of these drives I was just telling you about, something made me think about them, and I happened to have them on a Dropbox file, that I could access on my phone. So it was late at night driving down some road. I put it on, and it really it was really striking to listen back to it, because I couldn't quite remember how I had made these pieces.
Yeah.
I mean, I was listening to it thinking, well, yeah, this is me in a way, but it's kind of outside of me. So it was this interesting experience of like listening to something that I felt both inside and outside at the same time.
Yeah.
And I just went, wow, there's something valuable about that.
Yeah.
And something kind of connected to this other thing that I was doing with photography, this like looking for, like, you're like sort of reaching for something that's expansive, that's beyond the conscious way of making work.
Sometimes I'll try to generate something by I'll just try to do it bad on purpose. What does bad mean? You know what I mean? Do you ever do any version of that? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, I think that's kind of exactly that's why I decided to do that. Those little exercises was just to say I'm just gonna put my hands on the keyboard, and whatever the first thing is that happens when my hands touch the keyboard, that's gonna be the first layer of this thing, and then everything I do from there is gonna be a reaction to that. And I'm not gonna worry about, is this good?
You gotta go.
Yeah, I gotta go.
Okay,
this
how
has
we
been
doing
really
on-
fun. Thanks for having me.
But anyway, I think so. Yeah, it was all about kind of like stepping outside of the critic. Trying to get away from the critic.
Yeah.
Which I'm better. The older I've gotten, the better I am at shutting that voice out.
Be like,
it's still around, but
Do we have any facts that we need? Any fact checks?
No hard facts, but I did got some photos of Fran's East Side. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Super cool. They had some photos of Fran online that I got to check out. Oh, the Boutique Film Lab, we looked up just to throw it out there. They're open Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. If anyone's in the Nashville
Get your
area
film.
needs to.
Yep.
Boutique Film Lab.
Our guest has been Pat Sansone, and it's been a real pleasure chatting about curiosity. Pat is a photographer and a musician, and
But the book is called 100 Polaroids.
that's what the book was.
The album was called
Oh, yeah, I got that
Infinity
mixed
Mirror,
up.
which there are many copies still available.
Connected to the Tarkovsky film at all?
Spiritually, I think.
Yeah?
Yeah. Not specifically, but I'm sure those things.
may have been in
those
your
things
head.
are connected. Yeah.
Well, we'll let you go. This was really
This
awesome.
is amazing.
The show was
Thanks for the invite.
Yeah.
From
Super pleasure.
from breakfast to podcast.
Yeah.
Thank you again to Pat Sansone for taking the time to record this episode with us. It was a real treat to meet you, sir. Pat has a new book of photography out this month, appropriately titled Noticings. You can find it on his website. We also used his solo ambient record Infinity Mirrors to soundtrack this episode. Absolutely amazing. Please check out his other bands, The Autumn Defense and Wilco. I'd like to say an extra special thank you to all those who made this episode possible. Ian Upton, Evan Hughes, Maria Picaro, Hudson McNeese, and Brian Girgus and Dean Menta as always for our amazing theme music. This is your producer Rob Stewart saying thank you. Good night. Bye.